Hello. I'm making myself a cup of tea. And hello. Hi. Hi, colleagues. This is going to be in English because I'm going to read stories from this book. Okay, let's wait for some people to join us. Hi, colleagues. That's very nice to have you here. And yeah, let us wait for 1 more minute while everybody's notified. I've made myself a cup of tea. And I'm going to read out this stories from this lovely book. It's called Random Acts of Kindness. And I do believe that this book is something that we all need now. This is going to be in English because the book is in English. So let's start. I am going to save the recording, hopefully. And let's start. So this is a little book called Random Acts of Kindness, and it was a present to me from my friend Carol from the United States. And here I have it written here. And since then it's been on my shelf, and it reminds me that the stories are very short. So now these are going to be like bedtime stories, I think. Okay, so I'll first read some credentials and then we'll go on with the content. So I am going to save, hi Alona, I am going to try and save the stream. Wisdom from Random Acts of Kindness by the editors of Canary Press, Peter Pauper Press Incorporated, White Plains, New York. And because this is a collection of stories, there is no author, so just a collection of stories. And I'll also read the full the word from the publishers. When the original Random Acts of Kindness was published in 1993, it struck a chord that resonated with people around the globe. Since then, the kindness movement has grown into a powerful force for good. With true stories and practical suggestions, this little book inspires acts of compassion that can change the world, one heart at a time. Okay, let's start. That story is called Living from the Heart. When I was small, my grandmother told me, when you give from here, and she pointed to her solar plexus, it's like you must give. That's not giving, that's trading. I give you 3, so you give me 3. You give your soul away when you give like that. Giving is supposed to be from here, she said, pointing to her chest. When you give from your heart, it's not so you get anything back. You give because you want to. When you give like this, it fills you up. Your heart can never run out. There are no strangers. And remember to notice when other people give to you like this. Be sure to thank them. Decades later, struggling with a life-threatening disease, I traveled to a conference in search of answers. Poet Maya Angelou, one of the speakers, told of surviving a childhood of terror and violence. Your handholds through the darkness were gifts of beauty from favorite authors and artists. Their work inspired me, shaped my thinking, exposed me to what could be possible, she recalled. And I have never forgotten to thank you for those random acts of kindness. Maya Angelou's words left fingerprints on my heart as if it were warm wax. Once you begin to perform and acknowledge random acts of kindness, you no longer believe what you do does not matter. It is as if you are dancing along a beach, making footprints where the shoreline meets the sea. You know the tide will come and wash away the marks your dance has left. Still, it lives on in your heart, and thus the delight of being alive. You know you make a difference. Okay. Next story I want to read. Those who have just joined, we're reading Random Acts of Kindness book. The next story is called The Magic Dragon. Several years ago, when I was living in Chicago, I read in the newspaper about a little boy who had leukemia. Every time he was feeling discouraged or particularly sick, a package would arrive for him containing some little toy or book to cheer him up with, or a note saying the present was from the magic dragon. No one knew who it was. Eventually, the boy died, and his parents thought the magic dragon finally would come forth and reveal him or herself. But that never happened. After hearing the story, I resolved to become a magic dragon. No. Sorry, the signal disappeared. I continue. But that never happened. After hearing the story, I resolved to become a magic dragon whenever I could, and had many occasions. Hi. Yeah, we're reading Random Acts of Kindness book. Okay, sorry, the connection failed a little bit. Okay, the next story is called A Bouquet of Flowers. When I graduated from college, I took a job at an insurance company in this huge downtown office building. On my first day, I was escorted to this tiny cubicle surrounded by what seemed like thousands of other tiny cubicles, and put to work doing some meaningless thing. It was so terribly depressing, I almost broke down crying. At lunch, after literally punching out on a time clock, all I could think about was how much I wanted to quit. But I couldn't because I desperately needed the money. When I got back to my cubicle after lunch, there was a beautiful bouquet of flowers sitting on my desk. For the whole first month I worked there, flowers just kept arriving on my desk. I found out later that it had been a kind of spontaneous office project. A woman in the cubicles next to me brought in the first flowers to try to cheer me up, and then other people just began replenishing my vase. I ended up working there for 2 years, and many of my best, longest lasting friendships grew out of that experience. The next story is called A Gift of Fear. 2 days before my 50th birthday, I had a heart attack. It was a most surprising random acts of kindness. I had lived the previous 30 years of my life as a powerful, successful, and amazingly productive man. I had also lived so cut off from my emotions that I couldn't even fathom what the whole fuss about feelings was all about. I had worn out the efforts of 3 good women, took pride in my unfeeling logic, denied that there was anything wrong or missing in my life, and was prepared to march stubbornly forward. Until I was felled and terrified by my own heart, that experience unlocked a lifetime of buried emotions. So, without knowing it, when the doctors revived me, they delivered me to a life fuller and more beautiful than I had ever imagined. Thank you so much for your messages. Great story. Thank you for your message. Yeah, I love this book, honestly. It's always on my shelf. It has tiny, tiny stories, but they kind of spread the kindness. And they also have some suggestions of little things we can do on an everyday basis. And I'll read some of them. So, random acts of kindness suggestions. Spend half an hour in a hospital emergency room and do one random act of kindness that presents itself. Offer to help people who could use the assistance to cross streets, seniors, the blind, small children. And I'm also thinking about using ATM machines or computers. Some seniors are struggling, so this is something that we might do. The next time someone speaks to you, listen deeply without expecting anything. Plant a tree in your neighborhood. Why not put your shopping cart back in its appointed place in the parking lot? And I like this one. Write a note to the boss of someone who has helped you, thanking him or her for having such a great employee. Okay, the next story is called An Unexpected Apology. I was driving home from work one day and the traffic was terrible. We were crawling along and out of nowhere this guy just pulls out onto the shoulder, passes a whole line of cars and cuts me off so quickly I have to slam on the brakes to keep from crashing into him. I was really rattled. About 15 minutes later, I'm stopped at a light and I look over and there is the same guy next to me, waving for me to roll down my window. I could feel my adrenaline starting to flow and all my defenses coming up. But for some reason, I roll down the window and he says, "I'm terribly sorry. Sometimes when I get into my car, I become such a jerk. I know this must seem stupid, but I'm glad I could find you to apologize." Suddenly, my whole body just relaxed and all the tension and frustration of the day, the traffic, life just dissipated in this wonderfully warm, unexpected embrace. It's one of my favorites. And here's another page of suggestions for random acts of kindness. Make a list of things to do to bring more kindness into the world and have a friend make a list. Exchange lists and do one item per day for a month. Spend a week just being aware of things in nature that befriend you. Hold a random acts of kindness party where everyone tells the stories of kindness in their life. Bring a little beauty into sterile places. Drop off a plant at a police station or a cutting from a houseplant to your local fire station. Okay, let's go on with another story. I was trying to, choose the ones that I liked a lot. This story. This one. It's called Seeing the Sky. I live high in the hills and my body is getting old. One day I was out in my garden fussing with weeds and grew tired. I decided to lie back on the grass and rest like I used to when I was a small boy. I woke up some minutes later with a neighbor whom I had never met leaning over me, all out of breath, asking me if I were okay. He had looked out of his window 2 blocks up the hill and saw me lying on my back on the grass, looking, I'm sure, like the victim of a stroke or a heart attack, and had run all the way down to the hill to check on me. It was embarrassing, but it was also so wonderfully touching. After we had it all sorted out, he let out a deep breath and lay down on the grass beside me. We both stayed there very quietly for a while, and then he said, "Thank you for deciding to take your nap out on the lawn where I could see you. The sky is such a beautiful thing, and I cannot remember the last time I really looked at it." Yeah, thanks for listening. I like this story a lot. I truly like this book. Just a reminder, this is Random Acts of Kindness. Okay. This one is called Two Flat Tires. I used to make an 80-mile drive to visit my parents. One 40-mile stretch off the road is in the middle of nowhere. One day, as I was driving alone along the barren patch, I saw a family on the side of the road with a flat tire. Normally, I do not stop in such situations, but for some reason, I felt the need to do so that day. The family was very relieved when I volunteered to drive them to a gas station about 10 miles down the road to get help. I left them at the station because the attendant said he would take them back to their car and drove on my way. About 12 miles later, I had a blowout. Since I couldn't change the tire myself, I was stranded and not sure what to do. But in only about 10 minutes, along came a car and it pulled over to offer help. It was the same family I had stopped for earlier that day. Lovely story. And the next one is called Words of Comfort. I was walking up Amsterdam Avenue in New York during a particularly dark time of my life. I had recently lost a lover, and the pressures of law school were gaining on me. The darkness in my heart must have come to the surface because I walked by a destitute street person. He turned to me and said, "It can't be that bad." Simple words that changed my life and brought the spirit back to my form. And there is also a quote in this book by Glenda Taylor. "When we think we're separate, we lose power. Whenever I say my, I have lost my power. Power is not my power. It's only gainable as part of a larger whole. Then you communicate with the rest of yourself, which may be a tree. You reciprocally are moved by the universe. Whenever you shut down connectedness, you get depressed. It's fearful to know we're connected to everything in the universe, because then we are responsible." And that's a quote by Glenda Taylor. Okay. One more story is called Payback. Very short as well. I had an older neighbor who was very kind to me, a father figure really. After he died, I noticed that his yard had become completely overgrown. His widow was not physically able to do the gardening. So one morning, after I saw her leave for the day, I jumped the fence and put in a few hours of work. It was my way of paying him back for the care he had taken on. It's a lovely story. Okay. Next story is called The Car Angel. Yeah, we are reading Random Acts of Kindness. So, The Car Angel. I had just quit a job I hated and I was determined to find a way to live that felt right. Money was very tight and my car was dying on me. Really falling apart. A friend gave me the name of a guy who lived close to me and fixed cars. So I took my wreck to him and he fixed it. He fixed everything. Working on it for 2 days and charging me only $60. The parts alone had to have cost him quite a bit more than that. It was almost as though he read into my soul. This girl doesn't have money and she needs this car. He didn't know me from my friend. This car was my vehicle for getting to where I needed to go, and this total stranger made that possible when I really needed it. Thanks for listening. And here are some, this book has stories and some suggestions of practicing random acts of kindness. So here are some suggestions. Visit a neighbor with a bouquet of flowers for no reason at all. Send a letter to a teacher you once had, letting him or her know about the difference he or she made in your life. Say thank you to someone who helps you and really mean it. You might want to look into his eyes, smile, and if he's wearing a name tag, say his name as well. Ask an older person to tell you a story about his or her youth, such as what her favorite song was and why, and how he met his spouse. Let the person behind you in line at the grocery store go ahead of you. Okay, now one more story. It's called A Cup of Coffee. The book is published in the United States, and yet here we come. My grandmother was born in Russia. My grandmother was born in Russia at a time of great confusion and instability. Reminds me of something. She emigrated to this country as a young girl and ended up marrying a man who was extraordinarily successful. She could have lived in the fanciest neighborhood and eaten only at the best restaurants. Instead, she lived in a very modest area and would go to Woolworths for coffee. In those days, a cup of coffee cost 5 cents. And whenever my grandmother would buy a cup, she would always leave a $5 tip. Her explanation was simple. They work hard for their money. Okay, now we are reading stories from Random Acts of Kindness, and we're coming to an end. Here are some suggestions for Random Acts of Kindness. Make an anonymous donation to help some local charity that is actively helping people, feeding the homeless, providing foster care for children, and so on. Or start a fundraising drive in your office for such organizations. Slip a $20 bill into the pocketbook of a needy friend or stranger. Organize your friends and workmates to gather their old clothes and give them to homeless people. Go to a hospice or a hospital ward and see what you can do for one person. Okay. A few more stories left. This one is called The Good Friend. Get some tea. Oh, sorry. All right. The Good Friend. A good friend and I finally gotten together one evening after months of trying to make our schedules and the 50 miles separating us fit together somehow. We went out to eat and as usual had a great time talking about everything. I'm always amazed at how quickly and deeply we reconnect even after months of barely speaking on the telephone. While we were catching up on each other's lives, she noticed a man sitting alone at a table in the corner of the restaurant and commented to me that he looked sad, as if he were lacking of company. When we had finished our meal, I insisted on paying and my friend went along smiling. When the waiter came to pick up the check, my friend told him that she would like to pay anonymously for the dinner of the man in the corner. I realized again why I cared about her so much. And there's a quote here in the end: no joy can equal the joy of serving others. Okay, more ideas of random acts of kindness. Laugh out loud often and share your smile generously. If you know someone who is going through a bad day or a difficult time in life, make it better by doing something, anything, to let him or her know someone cares. And don't let on who did this. Like this one a lot. If you're the boss, bring your secretary a cup of coffee in the morning. Buy gift cards and give them anonymously to people you think could really use them. Okay, we have one more story to read and then a quote. This one is called Helping a Friend in Need. There was a time in my life when everything was working so smoothly. Okay, I'll start again. There was a time in my life when everything was working smoothly. Okay, helping a friend in need. There was a time in my life when everything was working so smoothly. I found myself sitting at home one Saturday with all my work done, all my household chores completed, dishes washed, laundry folded and put away, house dusted, grocery shopping completed, and that delicious feeling of having nothing to do. Then I thought about a friend from work who was a single mother of 2 small children and never seemed to have the time for anything. I jumped into my car, drove over to her house, walked and then said, "Put me to work." At first, she didn't really believe it, but we ended up having a great time cleaning like mad, taking time out to feed and play with the kids, and then diving back into the chores. Charity is the bone shared with the dog when you're just as hungry as the dog. Jack London. So here are some more ideas of random acts of kindness, what we can do. Take the opportunity in conversations with friends to tell them about kindness as you have experienced and ask about their experiences. Just talking about acts of kindness brings them alive in the world. Get your children to go through their toys and put aside those they want to donate to children who are less fortunate. If there is a garden you pass frequently and enjoy, stop by one day and leave a note letting the occupants know how much pleasure their garden gives you. Make a dedication on your local radio station to all those people who smiled at strangers today. And here we come to the end of the book, and there is a lovely, lovely quote by Albert Einstein. A human being is a part of the whole that we call the universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical illusion of his consciousness. This illusion is a prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for only the few people nearest us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living beings and all of nature. I'll just read the next. It's Albert Einstein. I just really want to read the last line again. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living beings and all of nature. And this is how the book finishes. Book stops. And there is some saying in the end. Every hand we extend, every act of kindness we commit, sends a ripple out into the world that is magnified by every life it encounters. And there is also the word from one of the people who took part in putting this book together. Her name is Dona Markova, PhD. And here are the words here. It is our hope you will be inspired by what we... Okay, I'll start again. Sorry. It is our hope you will be inspired by what we have breathed into these pages, and you will practice random acts of kindness so that which came to you as a seed will pass on to the next as blossom, and that which came to you as a blossom will go on as a fruit. Thanks for listening. This is, I guess, my random act of kindness, something that I could do to spread the kindness into this world. Alona, sleep well. I know it's very late in Krasnoyarsk. Thank you very much for listening. I will do my best to save the stream, and you feel free to use it as, bedtime stories, something to rock yourself to bed, to put you to bed, and let us, hope for the best. Thank you, Julia Kromakova. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for listening. There are several short stories. So, hi, Oksana, we've just finished. I'm sorry. Yeah, but I'll save the video. So, thank you very much, and good night.